Hey, I have a morning ritual where what I do is I read something inspirational every morning before I'll answer a phone call, check email, or answer anything. Hey, good morning, Renee. Hey, what's up, sister? What's up? Oh, my sister Karen, because I saw the Renee. Hey, what's up, Tony? But so my ritual every morning is to read something inspirational before I start my day in conversation with anyone. And what I'm doing right now is I'm actually rereading my books. Hey, Deb, I'm going through rereading my books and just reconnecting to some. Remember how I always say to you, trust your track record, laugh at your lack record? Well, I'm looking back at my track record and seeing where I've been. Because a lot of times, people have these new philosophies, but I'm looking, and I'm really happy to say, and I actually didn't plan to say all of this. I'm really happy to say that I see that I have a pretty consistent mindset, because my journey has been, which is one of the reasons I don't do regret, my journey has really been orchestrated by God, and seeing this path that I'm on in my motivational speaking business, which was actually started because of my gift of poetry, poetic expression. So, again, sometimes just take a breath and think about where you are now and look back and see how you can connect that to your past. Even as I say that, I think about how one of my things I always like to say to people is I'm not positive 365 24/7, but I'm positive more than I'm negative. I'm up more than I'm down. I'm going forward more than I'm going backwards. And there's nothing wrong with every now and then reframing that as stepping back and taking a look at your work. Look at your accomplishments and celebrate who you are, because who you are makes a difference to a lot of people. Anyway, I wrote this thing down because I recognized that the longer I took to share this message, because it came to me as I put on a thing, it came to me during my devotional that I needed to share this on Facebook. And the longer I took to share the message, the longer the message got. So I'm going to try to cut it down. But that's where your creativity and blessings, that's what your creativity and blessing is all about. Let them extend your spirit, not restrict your spirit, but let your creativity and your blessings extend your spirit. And that's a message that I especially want to pass on to my poetic friends out there. Your words make a difference and they touch somebody. So don't get so caught up. A lot of times when people are starting their poetry, do you like that poem? How was it? It's your poem. And it was great, because it was an expression that came through you, which is always how I've looked at my poetry. Actually, I can't say always. I started pretty much the way a lot of poets do, as a closet poet, wondering if this made sense or if it was good. But recognize that the gift is that, like in my, I think it's my sixth or seventh book, it's called A Poet in Every Prophet. And if you look at the word prophet, P-R-O-P-H-E-T, you'll see that the letters P-O-E-T are in there. So there's a poet in every prophet. And every poet needs to recognize that the words are coming to them through God and being spread out to people. And so that's where the prophecy comes in. But anyway, again, I just want to encourage our poetic friends out there to keep doing what you're doing. But here's what I wanted, what God gave me, what I happened to be reading, and so I decided I would share this morning, okay? And it's from my book, I Found Out I'm Dying, A Celebration of Life, reminding us that physically we're all dying from the day we're born. Get over it. One day you won't be here. So why don't you spend your time enjoying and celebrating your life? You see, I got to tell you this again. See, notice this, we get caught up in the headlines. I found out I'm dying. Oh my God, he's dying. Is it terminal cancer, whatever? He's going to die right in the middle of this Facebook Live broadcast? No, we forget to look at the subtitles in life. And the subtitle is A Celebration of Life. I know that one day I won't be here, so I'm celebrating now. I'm doing all the things that I want to do, and that can be difficult because then you get a lot of noise where people are telling you that's wrong, you shouldn't do that. People are trying to tell you who you should be, when in fact, who you should be is you, because that's the only time you're going to be successful. Anyway, one of the things that I am is pretty calm. And so this poem was actually written back in 1990. And I think, again, I love looking at it and seeing, wow, you know. Okay, anyway, one of the things I do in my books is always give a little story to it. This is not a big story, but an intro to the poem so people can know how to use the poem. And it says, sometimes poetry is no more than sharing an experience that touched your life. This next poem story is about a return trip from Washington, D.C., where I lived for 4 years, to Chicago on a sunny Saturday in July. It's called The Missing Line, or Did You Get Your Letter? Today I almost wrote my last line, but you would have never known. Oh, it started out as a nice day. The wake-up call, breakfast, the drive. Skip took a street route that I remembered using to rush someone to the airport. But we were in no hurry. I hadn't gotten my letter. Traffic stopped near the monument as the cops allowed a march to cross the street. Skip said, "You may have to do OJ, but you'll make it." I retorted, "If I miss this flight, there'll be a next one." We hugged goodbye, as it always behooves us to do. Skip said, "You have 13 minutes. I corrected him. I said, "They have 13 minutes. You see, I hadn't gotten my letter. It was an easy walk through the terminal, and as I picked my bag up from the conveyor, I mused over the army knife inside my bag that went unscanned. Need one have a bayonet to question others' safety? I embody the smuggler's feeling as each phase of the plan unfolds and thwarts that inner anxiety that questions the success of the mission. And as I checked my bag at the gate, I couldn't help but wonder whether or not some other passenger harbored visions of this flight not landing in Chicago. I bypassed my verbally wishing the pilot a good flight. I've always said, I'll tell the pilot when someone said to me to have a good flight. A mother sat across from me with her 7-year-old child. I thought the flight attendant brought her back because she wanted to breastfeed, but there were no buttons on her shirt. I thought about landing and the things I had to do today and tomorrow and the next day. I thought about how poor the pilot's English was as we taxied, and I felt relief that this was not my first flight or a sightseeing tour. The temperature in Chicago was 58 degrees, I heard that, and wondered how our cookout would fare. I spotted a headset in the seat next to mine and wondered if someone had left it in error because this was such a short flight, and would I be able to grab it before the girl in my row? Then I noticed that there was one in each seat. Again, I forgot to get a butterscotch and thought about calling Heather. How could I have not invited her to the cookout? I decided to move forward with my life. And as the flight picked up momentum, it lost an engine. As we rumbled to a stop, the pilot came on the air in a voice that reassured no one. I sat back, closed my eyes, and envisioned the eruption of the right wing. Our explosion in the clouds, or our water landing. How's that for red, white, and blue? I felt good, so I smiled. But in my mind, I heard, "Did you get your letter?" A Spanish-speaking lady could not understand the explanation of our need to deplane. A black woman took over for the weak-voiced flight attendant. As your name was called, you retrieved your ticket and proceeded to the terminal to rebook. A white girl had not my same last name. We both paused. "Did you get your letter? Did you get your letter?" As I stood in that long line for rebooking, I realized I had little chance of making another flight anytime soon. So I got on the short first-class line. And taking 2 baby steps at a time, I gambled and prayed that I get an agent that would listen or flatter easily. I advised Miss Smith, name changed to protect the innocent, that I needed to be on the next flight out to Chicago. She apologized that this line was for first class and that I would have to get on the coach line. I asked if it were possible to ticket seats from any of the windows. She said, yes, but it would not be fair to all the other passengers who have been waiting. I said, it's not my problem that none of them had the imagination I had to get on this line. So if you'll keep your voice down, I'll keep my voice down. I need to be on the next flight. She half smiled and said she'd see what she could do. As she labored at the computer, I thanked her by the name on her badge and expressed my being very shaken by the near-death situation of the aborted flight. She smiled and understood while merrily putting my flight plan together. My flight plan, but not my letter. And as I again took my easy walk through the terminal, I mentally wished my fellow ex-passengers well on their trip, whenever it would resume. As they grumbled and exhaled and slammed phones and kicked luggage and stood on line, yes, on line. Well, today I almost wrote my last line, but you would have never known. See, I thought me and God was tight, but I still haven't gotten my letter that says I'll be here tomorrow. So until I do, I'll continue to live this day and this moment out and let all the people who've gotten their letters agonize over the petty prematurities of what they have to lose. I still haven't gotten my letter that says I'm going to be here tomorrow. And that's what you have to think about. You don't have a we always hear, everyone says it, that tomorrow's not guaranteed, but we're still busy living for tomorrow. And so am I, because I'm conscious of my legacy. I work on stuff with doing, creating memories with my nieces and nephews, brothers and sisters, and you. I'm still working on what tomorrow's going to be, but I still understand that I might not be a part of tomorrow. So that's why I have a calm disposition about everything. That's why I'm in the gift and in the passionate path that I am in terms of my business of motivational speaking, and trying to keep everybody calm, dealing with stress, recognizing that stress does not always have to be negative. There's a positive stress as well. Sometimes stress means, think about it, how when you exercise, you're stressing your muscles to build them and grow. But I digress, because I want to get to this message to let you get out of here, because you got to get about your day of having a good time, because you do have a letter that say you're going to make it to today. Because here's what happened as I was reading that message and I sat and thought about it. I started looking at my surroundings. And see, that's what you have to do. Look at your surroundings. And what I want to bring your attention to is the pictures that happen to be in my, right now I'm in my dining area. And the first I want to bring your attention to is this one over here. Most people, we know that's, you've seen that saying about, it's called footprints. And maybe if you can blow your camera up and look at this picture a little closer, you'll see that there were initially 4 sets of footprints, and then the Lord was carrying this brother, out of a storm. But if you look at something, he's actually, the guy who's being carried is hands-free. His hands are down by his side. And actually, doesn't it look like he's being carried into a storm? He's being carried toward the storm. And again, this is how my mind just kept wandering as I started thinking about this message. Your storm is colorful at the beginning. I always say that, we have to recognize the storms that we've been in and we've come out, we've been through. We're always going into another storm. But guess what? We're going into the storm because to show us just how strong our faith has to be. So, fast forward, moving from that picture, and you can always go back and look at them, and now look at this one behind. This depicts the same type of scene of being carried out of the storm. And this time it shows a mother and her child. And Jesus has now brought her out of the storm. So recognize that the first picture had a colorful storm. See, that's what I'm saying. Your storm at the beginning is colorful because it's a storm that God has chosen you for. It's something that God has chosen you to take you through. So you don't have to see your storm as a negative thing, but an opportunity that you're about to get to grow in your faith in who you are and who God wants you to be. So this storm, what happens is the new storms are colorful, but the old storms are dark and angry because you made it through. See how there's anger in the old storm? And when you get closer, you'll see that there's also a demon in the new storm. And the demon is upset because you've made it through the storm. And what you can't see in that picture is that there's also a rainbow that comes out. Go on and get the picture. But and now the reason I brought attention to you about how in the first storm, hanging down and hands free, is because in this storm, the woman, the mother, if you again closer, her hands are clutched around her child and around the neck of her faith. See, so that that's what you have to see, that her, she's holding on to her faith because she's come through yeah, Ronnie, and now look at those pictures and start to see these things. Notice that when you're coming out of the storm is dark because when we look back, we think we've been through something. Recognize that you've been through something. Give yourself credit for having gone through the storm. But let me tell you also, again, it's because as I looked at this picture of her coming out of the storm with her hands clutched around her child and around Jesus's neck, and whatever your faith is around, clutched or holding on to your faith, I had a flashback to my mother's first day in ICU, where she was visibly scared about what was going on in her life as she was battling in her final days of the liver cancer. But I was on that first watch of sitting through the night, and when my mother finally got comfortable and went to sleep, what I noticed is I saw the Bible in her hand. And I went, and it just looked like her hand was stuck. And so I went to see if I could move the Bible from her hand, and I couldn't. I could not. She had an ironclad grip on that Bible, even though she was now comfortably asleep during her trial, through her storm. And I sat there, and I describe it in my book, Stuff Happens, and I describe that chapter is called Dealing with Life, because I don't call it dealing with death. Again, just like this book, I found that I'm dying, we're dealing with life. And I saw how strong my mother's faith was, that, even through this storm she was going through, she held on to her Bible. She held on to her faith. And I smiled when I saw that happen, because I said, wow, this is who I came from. And again, if we look at every single person in America as well, but in the world, but certainly every single person in America, you are from a strong ancestry. Our ancestors came over here. They didn't have the technology and the medicine that we have today, the forecast and the internet. They had to make it. So every single one of us is a descendant of a survivor. The people who and let's use blacks with slavery and Jewish with the Holocaust, the people who were killed or took their own life, they may not have an extension of their name, of their legacy. But guess what? Obviously, that didn't happen to your line. You come from a survivor somewhere. And see, even now the message is getting longer as I think about it. So let me go back to the finalizing that again, because now if you see here, this is a picture of my mother, me, and my sister. I'm sorry, that's a lie. That's a picture of my sister and my mother, the two most important women in my life. And my sister was born just 10 months after me, Zetine. And so there they are in that picture. Above that is a picture, if I can get that, of me over my head. You can see the rainbow that I was talking about in the picture. But, you want to have your pictures surrounding you that talk about, what's going on in your life and the special people. So, these are the types of conversations that you can have with yourself as you go through the day or whatever your way of starting your day. And so just going back to the original poetry, especially if you look at it through, if you're looking at this on a broadcast, it's called The Missing Line, or Did You Get Your Letter? And the reason I call it The Missing Line is because if that plane had crashed, then even though because I began writing that poem on the plane when it happened. So if the plane had actually crashed, you would have never known that I had started that poem. And that's really the way it is. Something is going to happen where someone's last words or the last thing they did will go unknown. That's why I try to tell people, try to make as much known as possible. Let someone know what you're going through. And since I see my boy Ja on here, in yesterday's broadcast, we talked about mental health issues in the Black community. We started to talk about that. And part of a mental health issue is someone not letting someone else know what they're going through. We can be in denial about what we're going through. And all of us are going through. And let me just jump on that word through. That through is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Have you ever said to someone, child, I'm going through this situation? That's a self-fulfilling prophecy that says, I know I'm going to come out. I know that I'm going to make this storm angry because I'm going to come out. So start to hear the words that you use. Start to see the words that you offer other people. And Nathan and amen. I look at amen as AMEN, a message everyone needs. Everyone needs your message. They need you to be who you are because it makes a difference in their life. Not that they want to copy being who you are. You ever say, oh, I want to be just like you. Bulletin. You only want to be like yourself because you have to be who you are. You are an important piece of everyone's puzzle. So don't let your line go missing. Make sure that someone gets your last line. But more importantly, recognize that you don't have a letter that guarantees you're going to be here tomorrow. So continue to live and enjoy this life. In fact, what is my last line said? It says, because I always like to make sure that the closing of my poems hits the hardest. And it says, see, I thought me and God was tight, but I still haven't gotten my letter that says I'll be here tomorrow. So until I get that letter, I'll continue to live this day and this moment out. And let all the people who've gotten their letters, that their letters agonize over the petty prematurities of what they have to lose. You have nothing to lose. Don't just say that. Believe it. Because the most important thing that you have is what you hold on to, is your faith. As you hold on to your faith, you will go through one storm after another. God will take you through take you out of an angry storm by taking you through and show them again that they have no power over you. So thanks for listening to this message. Whatever your ritual is in the mornings, keep your rituals. Create a ritual. I think it's important to have an intake of some type of spirituality to get your day started before you get into the noise of what's going on around you. Thank you. God bless you. And be sure to share the message. Over and out. Ciao.